Welcome to Mission Evolution Radio Show with Gwilda Wiyaka, bringing together today's leading experts to uncover ever-deepening spiritual truths and the latest scientific developments in support of the evolution of humankind. For more information on Mission Evolution Radio with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit www.missionevolution.org. And now, here's the host of Mission Evolution, Miss Gwilda Wiyaka.
When our emotions are turbulent, concentrating on personal evolution or anything else becomes extremely difficult, if not impossible. Emotional upset, however, isn't necessarily indicative of a mental health condition. What hidden factors contribute to emotional instability? Mission Evolution Radio TV show is coming to you around the world on the X Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. With us this hour to uncover a major underlying cause of emotional instability is Dr. Deb Matthew. Dr. Deb, America's happy hormone doctor, is the best-selling author of It's Not Normal, A Busy Woman's Guide to Hormone Imbalances, an international speaker, educator, wife, and mom of 4 boys. After suffering for years with fatigue, irritability due to hormone imbalances, her quest to resolve her personal health led her to change everything about her practice of medicine. Dr. Deb has been featured on national podcasts, radio, and over 100 TV appearances on NBC, ABC, CBS, PBS, and FOX. Her medical practice, Signature Wellness, is located in Charlotte, North Carolina. Dr. Deb, thanks for joining us on Mission Evolution.
Well, it's so great to be here.
This is a wonderful topic, and I think it's overlooked so much. So you are a medical doctor, and yet your bio indicates you suffered for years with fatigue and irritability. Would you please describe your path to discovering what was really going on?
Yeah, well, for years, I was tired all the time. Like napping was my favorite hobby. I was cold all the time. I used to take a sweater with me everywhere, even in the summer in North Carolina, because the air-conditioned movie theaters and restaurants would just make me shiver uncontrollably. And those symptoms had been going on for so long that I just thought I was a cold-natured person who needed more sleep than everybody else. When I was in my late 30s, though, things got even worse. And I found myself shrieking at my kids over silly little things. And then I would feel so guilty because I didn't want to be that kind of a horrible mom. And it was my poor husband that really bore the brunt of my Wicked Witch of the West impersonation. He would sometimes call from the car on the way home from work because he could sort of tell by the tone of my voice whether it was safe to come home or whether he needed to put on a suit of armor to protect himself before he walked in the door. And what was so confusing is that I knew that how I was feeling and how I was behaving was really not normal. It was not me, but there was nothing in my medical training that helped me understand what was happening to me. And I knew that I wasn't really depressed. Like I didn't think I needed an antidepressant, but I really didn't know what else to do. And what changed everything for me is actually I read a book that was written by Suzanne Summers. You remember her, like the Thigh Master? And so she wrote a book about women's hormones. And in that book, I learned all about how these hormones affect our mood and our behavior and our sleep and the fatigue and all these other things that I'd been going through for so many years. And suddenly I understood what was going on. And once I knew what the problem was, then I was able to find the help that I needed. But I got to tell you, I was really resistant to reading that book because medical doctors don't want to get our medical information from celebrities. We expect that we were taught everything we needed to know at medical school. And the reality is, I sort of joke that I should get a partial refund because they left out a whole bunch of really important stuff that I needed to know. So once I got my hormones back in balance, I got my energy back. My kids got their mom back, my husband got his wife back, and I got my life back. But I didn't want to go back to just writing prescriptions all day anymore because that didn't make sense to me. So I completely retrained. And now for 18 years, I've been helping men and women get their hormones back in balance so they can have energy. They can really get well, a lot of times get off the prescription drugs and love the way they feel.
It's amazing though. It seems like when it sneaks up on you, and then you start identifying with it, is what it sounded
Yes,
like. Is
absolutely.
is that pretty common that it happens slow enough that a person just thinks, I'm just really grumpy today, or I'm just, like you say, I'm just a cold
Yeah.
person, or
When we're in our 30s, we're not thinking about menopause, right? Like there was nothing, I wasn't having hot flashes, like there was nothing to say to me, this is hormones that are making you feel the way that you do. And so I see women all the time, men too, but who know that they just don't feel right. They don't feel like themselves. And yet when they go to the doctor, we're not really given any help. We can be handed sleeping pills and antidepressants and anxiety pills. But if the real problem is a hormone imbalance, then those pills may only partially solve the problem and they don't really get us all the way well.
so. Also, even if you do a complete blood count, don't you have to especially ask for a hormone panel, or
Yeah.
it's not included, is it?
It's not something that's typically done, and one of the challenges is that what we are trained in medical school is literally not to measure your hormone levels, and there is a good reason for that because when women are premenopausal and, we're having our cycles, our hormone levels go up and they go down over the course of the month. So if you're in the doctor's office on some random Tuesday afternoon and you say, "Hey, doc, could you check my hormones?" They feel like, why bother? Because next week it's going to be different. The week after that, it's going to be different. So we're sort of taught, don't even waste your time. And then when we're past menopause, when we've been through menopause, then our hormone levels are going to be low. And so they just feel like your hormone levels are going to be low. Why should we bother to check? I feel differently about it though, because our blood sugar changes whether we've eaten or whether we're fasting, what we've eaten. And we don't tell you we can't measure your blood sugar because it's changing. We just take into account, were you fasting or not? Your blood pressure is going to change whether you were like super stressed out trying to get through traffic to get to your doctor's appointment. And then you show up and your heart's pounding. That's going to make your blood pressure higher. But we don't not check your blood pressure just because it changes. We just take into account, okay, well, you're really stressed out. Let's check it again later when it's gone down. So the same thing is true with hormones. We definitely can check them. It's just how we interpret the results that's really important. And it's not really what we were trained to do in medical school.
So, in your case, why was the hormonal imbalance overlooked for so long?
Two times actually when I was in medical school, doctors looked right here at my throat. This is where your thyroid is, right at the base of your throat. They looked at my throat and said, your thyroid is enlarged. You should go get it checked. And so I went to see my doctor, and both times I was told, your labs are normal. And I kept on being cold and being tired and struggling with my weight. And I had dry, limp hair, all symptoms of low thyroid function. And eventually, finally, after about 10 years of symptoms, now my thyroid lab finally was not in the normal range. And I was finally treated with thyroid replacement. But I felt no different. And I went a whole nother 10 years. So now it's been 2 decades of having the same symptoms until I read that book by Suzanne and learned about hormones and learned how to get my thyroid hormones actually working. And those hormones or those symptoms are a thing of the past. But it took 20 years before I got the right diagnosis. And my story is not uncommon. There are many, many women out there who have all the symptoms of low thyroid, but they're always told their labs are normal. And the implication is if your lab is normal, can't be your thyroid. Therefore, it must be that you are lazy or it's your personality flaw or, it's just you. Um, so either they're told everything is normal or they're given a thyroid pill, but it doesn't really work. Maybe it makes their blood test look normal, but it doesn't make them feel normal, which was my experience.
Does that have to do with uptake? I mean, I know there's several kinds of thyroid, and it's kind of hard to get the second kind. You have to probably have it done in a compounding laboratory. But isn't there's more to than just the thyroid, right?
There definitely is more to just the thyroid. So, one of the things that is interesting to think about is our thyroid hormone is the hormone that regulates energy generation. It tells us to raise our body temperature so that we can be warm. So, if you don't have enough thyroid, you tend to be cold. That's why I was carrying my sweater in July in North Carolina. It tells you to burn fat instead of store fat. That's why women who don't have good thyroid function really struggle with their weight. Trying to lose weight if your thyroid hormones are not where they need to be, it's like beating your head against the wall. It's so frustrating. It just doesn't work. But It's more than just your thyroid gland, because your thyroid gland makes a certain kind of thyroid hormone. It's called T4. And that T4 goes around and around in your bloodstream, but it doesn't actually do anything. When it gets into your tissues, your body has to convert it into T3. That's the thyroid hormone that does the job. And so not everybody is good at converting T4 into T3, but there's an evolutionary reason for that. Because back in the olden days, when there was a famine, we didn't have enough food to eat, if you were burning too many calories, then you were more likely not to survive the famine. If you were good at conserving energy by not activating your T4 into T3, you were more likely to survive the famine. So we all are descendants of the people who survived this famine. So we all are people who are more prone historically to not being great at converting the T4 into the T3. So the standard thyroid pills that we give are just T4. But if you take that T4 pill and it makes your thyroid labs look great, but you can't activate it, then you're still stuck with all the same symptoms.
So, is it common for hormone imbalances to be missed when diagnosing women with fatigue, irritability, depression? And if so, why?
Yeah, we were not really trained to treat that in medical school. We are trained to treat diseases with drugs and surgery primarily. And this is not the things that we're talking about today aren't really diseases. So hypothyroidism, okay, I guess we could say that, we are trained to diagnose it. We're just not well trained. We miss a lot of things. For the female hormone issues, we are not properly trained to look for those things or to treat them. The only real tools that we're given is birth control pills. So some women have a lot of PMS and menstrual problems, etc., and we can give birth control pills to regulate the cycle, and that can help. But birth control pills aren't actually real hormones. They're synthetic chemicals that are man-made, and they turn off our hormones, and our hormones are replaced with the chemicals that are in the pills. And there's all different kinds of pills with all different forms of the different hormones in them. So you might get one that's pretty close to what you need and do okay. A lot of women have side effects if the dose or the type is not quite right for them. But at the end of the day, it's not really making you well. And so if you need it for birth control, that's one thing. But if we're trying to use it to treat your symptoms, it's not, in my opinion, the best way to do it. Carries some risks. It increases your risk for blood clots. It lowers testosterone, which maybe we can talk about that in a few minutes. So we weren't really given the tools to fully understand all the implications of how all of these different hormones impact our mood, our behavior. And so doctors just don't really know how to fix it.
And it's a question of balance too, isn't it? I mean, we'll
Yeah,
talk about that on the other side of a break here about how it's not just adding one hormone because it isn't. If you add something
that's
here,
it.
something over there goes haywire. Yeah. So, but we are going to take that station break. Dr. Deb and I will return very shortly, so don't go away. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Where does your happy go? With us this hour discussing the role of hormones in overall well being is Dr. Deb Matthew. Dr. Deb is the author of This Is Not Normal, A Busy Woman's Guide to Hormonal Imbalances. Dr. Deb, speaking of balance, we were talking about just before we went into the break how it is a question of balance when you're dealing with hormones. Could you go into that a little bit for us?
Yeah, a lot of these hormones have sort of equal and opposite actions. So if one hormone is kind of high normal and the other hormone is kind of low normal, technically, if we did your blood test, they might both be in the normal range, but because they're out of balance, you don't feel right. And there's a lot of examples. A really important one for women is what we call estrogen dominance. And this is where there is relatively more estrogen compared with progesterone. Those are the two hormones that go up and down throughout our menstrual cycles, and then they both get quite low after we go through menopause. But in women who are in their late 30s, in their 40s, in their early 50s, it's very common that they're still maintaining estrogen, but progesterone levels start to drop as we're tippy-toeing our way towards menopause. And progesterone is the calming hormone. This is the hormone that makes us feel chilled out and relaxed, and we can deal with, 4 screaming children at our feet or all those annoying coworkers that we have to put up with, and we can just get along with people. When that progesterone level starts to decline, we tend to get more irritable, impatient, critical, negative. Little things just annoy us. And I have a very unscientific theory that I want to share with you. You know how we lately have been calling them Karens, these women out there that are, doing silly things and saying silly things and getting themselves into all kinds of trouble. If you look at who is doing it, it is often midlife women who are putting their foot in their mouth. And so I think these are women where their progesterone level has dropped, their filter is kind of gone, and they are just saying what, the first thing that comes into their mouth because they have no more tolerance left. Also, because progesterone is the calming hormone, it helps us not to feel so anxious. So one of the things that I suffered with when I was going through this is I was waking up in the middle of the night with panic attacks for no apparent reason. There was nothing terrible happening that should be causing this. And it was very confusing. But I see this a lot is women will present with anxiety when they're in their 40s, when they didn't used to have anxiety before, or maybe they have had some anxiety, but all of a sudden the anxiety is so much worse. And a clue to whether this could be hormonal is if it goes with the menstrual cycle. So if the irritability and the anxiety get a lot worse before your period, and then the week after your period, you get back to normal and you feel good again, then that's a really big clue that it is probably your hormones that are playing a role. And it's not that you don't have hormones or you're not making the hormones. It's this imbalance in the estrogen and progesterone that's creating these symptoms.
So let's talk a little bit about menopause. Um, is it necessary? Is it normal? What's the purpose behind menopause and why is it so disruptive?
Yeah. Well, in the past, we didn't usually live much past menopause. So we were here, we, procreated, we had our babies. And once our ovaries ran out of eggs and we weren't going to be procreating anymore, things sort of shut down and we didn't really live very much longer. But now in our modern society, we can live our whole second half of our life after our ovaries have shut down. So menopause means when your ovaries run out of eggs and you stop having a period. Technically, it's exactly 12 months from the date of your last period. So menopause is technically only a day, and everything else after that, you're menopausal or postmenopausal or however you want to say it, but you're going to be menopausal the whole rest of your life. And I think a lot of women think that going through menopause means that they're going to have some hot flashes for a few months, and then that's going to be over, and then it's going to be done. And I wish that was true, but that's not really how it works because our hormone levels drop dramatically, drop like a rock when our ovaries shut down. And with those low hormone levels going forward, we have a lot of chronic disease that develops. And you can have all kinds of symptoms going through menopause, and we can maybe come back and talk about more of the symptoms. But over time, we lose bone. So we end up with osteoporosis and fractured hips and frailty. Our brain shrinks and our memory starts to go. It affects our vision. It affects our heart. So women who are premenopausal, the hormones really protect our heart. So women have a much lower risk for heart disease than men do. But after we go through menopause and our hormone levels drop, we lose that protection. And now women are at least as susceptible to heart disease as men, if not even more so. So the hormones are so important in keeping us youthful and healthy. And so when they go down, it really promotes our slow demise.
So we've been talking about women. What about men? Are they subject to hormonal imbalances as well? And what do they look like?
Yeah. So the hormone that we think about the most for men is testosterone. And testosterone is the hormone that causes men and women to feel confident and motivated and have competitive drive. And so If testosterone naturally goes down with age, it's going down a lot faster in our modern times. So maybe we can talk about that too. But as testosterone levels decline, men start to feel less motivated and confident and have that competitive drive. And they can start to feel more depressed and anxious and worried, second guessing themselves, having difficulty to make decisions. This is true for both women and men. But there's been some really interesting studies that have looked at how these hormones really affect our behavior. So they looked at men who are stock traders, which is like historically a really stressful job. So in the morning when they first woke up, they measured their testosterone levels and then off they went to work. And the men on the stock trading floor who had had the highest levels of testosterone that morning made the riskiest trades and made the most money. So I'm not saying that having higher testosterone is going to, make you riskier or make you more money, but it affected their behavior. We also know that if you're cheering for a winning sports team and your team wins, you get a little boost of testosterone. So it goes both ways. Our behaviors can trigger testosterone. If you fall in love, if different things happen to you, it affects your hormone levels, but your hormone levels will also impact your behaviors.
Fascinating. So it kind of makes you wonder, how much are we who we are and how much are we our hormones, right?
I think that's such an important point because these hormones play a really important role in who we are on the inside, how we relate to the world around us, how we react to other people. And so there's so many other things that affect that, our life experiences, etc. But if we notice that something has changed and we can't really explain it, if you're anxious for no good reason, if things in your life are going well, but yet you feel really depressed, if you can't think straight and remember things and you have to make lists for your lists because you can't remember stuff, it really could be your hormones.
That's amazing. That's the case with men and or women, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So how do hormones affect our mood, thought, and behavior? I mean, you mentioned some examples, but what's the mechanism going on there?
Yeah. So hormones are chemical messengers. They tell our cells what to do. So they tell our cells whether we should burn fat or store fat. They tell our heart whether it should beat faster or beat slower. And we have many, many hormone receptors in our brain. So all of these different hormones, all of our hormones, thyroid, cortisol, which is our stress hormone, estrogen, and the progesterone, which is the calming one, testosterone, which is the motivating one. All of these hormones impact our brain and they affect our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, our behaviors. We have happy hormones like serotonin, which we think of it as the happy hormone. A lot of our antidepressant medications work by trying to boost serotonin levels in our brain. Oxytocin is a hormone that is like the cuddle hormone. It's the hormone that makes us want to be close to people and to nurture. And it is a hormone that is released when moms are breastfeeding their babies. And so that stimulates that mother-baby bond. So the hormones are really very, very important in affecting how we feel. And so I think that if somebody marches into their doctor to say, I don't feel good, I don't feel right, I'm anxious, depressed, irritable, unmotivated, whatever the case may be, I think that we should be thinking about hormone levels, not simply thinking which antidepressant prescription should be written.
Yes, to start at the source, right? Instead of the band-aid. So in our modern world, we've got a lot of artificial things, and it's not nice to fool Mother Nature. How much of the artificial things in our environment are at the base of some of these hormone imbalances?
Wow, you really picked a great question. So many of the chemicals that we are exposed to are what we call endocrine disruptors, hormone disruptors. That means they muck up how our hormones work. Sometimes they mimic the hormones. So they kind of, for example, there's some things that act like estrogen. We call them xenoestrogens. So they act like estrogen, but not exactly the same way. And so they cause all kinds of problems, including potentially causing more breast cancer, causing lower testosterone levels in men. And some examples of these are very common things. So most people have heard of bisphenol A or BPA, which is in plastic. And so like reusable plastic water bottles, for example. And because we know that BPA is a hormone disruptor, more and more companies are starting to take it out of the plastics. And now you can get ones that say BPA free. The problem with plastic is that they've replaced the BPA with different kinds, BPB, or different ones that have never been tested. So we don't actually know whether they're better. Maybe they're actually worse. They just haven't been around enough and we don't know. Another important hormone disruptor in plastics is called phthalates, which is spelled with a silent P. So don't ask me to spell it right now, but phthalates. And those are what makes plastic soft. So when my son, he's going to be 28 this month, when he was a baby, we had all these little soft, chewy toys that we used to give our babies to teeth on. But those toys were filled with phthalates. That's what made them soft. Nipples on baby bottles. But they've been taken out. We know that those aren't safe. They've been taken out of children's things, but they're still in our plastic, disposable water bottles, the soft water bottles. And so they leach into the food and, into the water and get in our body. Another really important one is plastic wrap, that you cover your food with. So especially if we put the food in the microwave covered with the plastic wrap, the steam from the food is leaching these phthalates out of the plastic and into our food. And then this phthalate gets in our system and it's a hormone disruptor and it mucks up how our hormones work. There's many examples. Another really important one is called atrazine. And atrazine is an herbicide. So we spray it on, the crops, et cetera, to keep the weeds out. But then the rain comes, it washes into our waterways, gets into our bodies. And atrazine actually can turn boy frogs into girl frogs. And apparently there is enough atrazine in the urine of an average American man to turn a boy frog into a girl frog. Now, we don't know what this does to humans because we can't really do that experiment, right? We can't take people and give them a whole bunch of atrazine and see what happens. So we know that it's not good. One more example is we all used to use that antibacterial soap. And you can't get the antibacterial soap the same way anymore because it had an ingredient in it called triclosan.
Well,
And
we're going to have to leave this as a cliffhanger.
okay.
We're going to talk about antibacterial soap on the other side of a commercial break. Dr. Deb and I will be right back to continue our discussion. So stay right there. This is Mission Evolution, www.missionevolution.org. Beware the modern convenience. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. With us discussing the link between what we eat, hormones, and emotions is Dr. Deb Matthew. Her website, signaturewellness.org. We were talking about washing your hands with antibacterial soap, and Lord knows there was plenty of that going on during COVID. And then people kind of stuck to that. It's like they feel safer, or they have the hand sanitizers, etc. And you're saying there might be a problem there. What is it?
So a few years ago, triclosan, which was the main ingredient in antibacterial soap that we all used, it was removed from the market. And the reason that they took it out is because it is a known hormone disruptor that causes problems with estrogen in women and in men. So they did an experiment, and I don't remember now if it was mice or gerbils or hamsters or some little rodent creature. And when they gave them this triclosan from the antibacterial soap, it caused their testes to turn from pink to blue. So once again, we can't do that study on humans. It would not be ethical. So we don't exactly know all the things, but we do know that it's not good. So it's an important thing to talk about because when our hormones are affected, it affects our mood, our energy, our behavior. We have an epidemic of depression and anxiety in our world right now. And of course, there are many factors that are contributing to it. It's not only the hormones, but it's interesting to think about how much of that could be contributed by these hormone changes that are a result of the environment. Fertility is something that we're really concerned about with all these hormone disrupting chemicals. So how is this going to affect the future evolution of humans with what we've done to our environment? We don't know.
And speaking of the future evolution of humans, we've evolved to the point that we stay alive longer, and yet the wisdom and all that wonderful stuff that's supposed to come with age that the indigenous peoples honored in their elders is becoming increasingly unavailable to us because of the brain fog and all the things you just mentioned. How can we take this so that we can reclaim our elderhood?
Yeah. So let's stop talking about doom and gloom, right? Let's talk about some positive things because the truth is we do have some control over this. And there are some small things that we can all do that aren't overly complicated in order to keep ourselves healthy and to age gracefully and to keep our hormones balanced no matter what age we are. So one of the important things is to think about our nutrition because, of course, we need to fuel our body with healthy nutrients. And in order to produce the hormones in our body, we need the right building blocks. We need enough of the healthy fats. And so many years we told everybody low fat diet, low fat diet. But all of these hormones that we're talking about today are all made out of cholesterol. So cholesterol is not a bad thing. In fact, if your cholesterol is high, that's just a warning sign that something's wrong. But we need cholesterol to make estrogen and progesterone and testosterone and cortisol. And so sometimes your cholesterol goes up if your hormones are deficient because your body's trying to make more of the ingredient it needs to make more hormones. So we want you to eat healthy fats. Those are things like extra virgin olive oil and nuts, seeds, the omega-3s, so wild caught fish. So enough healthy fats in your diet, lots of fruits and vegetables of all different colors of the rainbow that have all the different vitamins and minerals in them. Especially for women, we want to make sure we're getting enough protein. That is so important for us to maintain our muscle mass so that we do not become frail little old ladies in the future. So healthy nutrition is one important thing. Another thing that we haven't really touched on yet that's very important is stress and managing stress in a healthy way. When we have stress in our life, and who doesn't have stress in their life, right? Our cortisol level goes up. That's our stress hormone. And cortisol helps us cope with stress. So if you have a healthy mechanism for having the right amount of cortisol when you need it, then you will be able to handle the stressful situation and it will pass and on you'll go. When we're overstressed, when we've had years of stress, day in and day out, that system gets disrupted. So now you can always, that fight or flight response is sort of always on, and you always feel kind of stressed out, and your cortisol level is already up to here. And then when the next stressful thing happens, you've got nothing left to give. And it just makes it so difficult to cope with stress. And even worse, your system can burn out. So now the cortisol level drops inappropriately. You don't have enough. And then every little thing feels exhausting and stressful and overwhelming. And that's when people start to feel burned out. That's when, if you have a bad day, you really just kind of want to crawl into bed and pull the covers over your head and make it go away because you just don't really want to deal with it. And there's a really common pattern that we see, which is that it gets hard to get out of bed in the morning. Cortisol is kind of like long-acting adrenaline, and we're supposed to naturally get a little boost in the morning so that your eyes pop open and you jump out of your bed ready to take on the day. And so if you're not getting that little boost, it gets so hard to get out of bed. You need to press snooze a couple times. You need some caffeine. Caffeine boosts cortisol levels in your brain so you can wake up and feel like a human. So finally you get up and get going, and then you get this crash and burn at 2, 3 in the afternoon. For a lot of people, they start to feel better around dinner, but if they don't go to bed early enough, they get this second wind, and now 10 o'clock at night, they're wide awake, sometimes getting the best work of their day done, but then they can't fall asleep. And so now they're up at night, and that darn alarm clock goes off too early. This is so common that it's just normal to drink coffee in the morning and take a melatonin or a sleeping pill or something to help you go to sleep at night, but it is not normal and it's not good for us. So having things that we can do to help protect us from the harmful effects of stress and from the wrong amounts of cortisol is important. A couple of my suggestions that I really like, one of them is gratitude. Your body can't feel grateful and angry, bitter at the same time. And so If you're feeling stressed out, overwhelmed, etc., if you can stop and think of 3 things that you're grateful for, it really changes the hormones in your body. It changes your chemistry, and it helps to protect you from the harmful effects of stress. And that's simple. It's free. It doesn't take any time. Everybody can do it. And there's always something that you can be grateful for, even when times are hard.
Well, it starts to make a lot of sense why there was a custom to, in a lot of different societies and religions, to give gratitude for your food before you eat it. So that would
Yes.
change your hormonal level and probably put you in a better position to utilize what you're eating.
Yes, to digest it. Absolutely.
Amazing. So, speaking of digestion, when we have a hormonal imbalance, what's it do to our ability to digest?
Yeah. There are different hormones that affect our digestion in different ways. One of the most obvious connections between hormones and our gut health is thyroid. When we are hypothyroid, meaning not enough thyroid hormone, everything in our body slows down. Our heart rate slows down, our energy slows down, our hair doesn't grow as well, but our digestive tract slows down. So we end up constipated. Such a common thing that we see all of the time. When cortisol is not quite right, it actually impacts the lining of our digestive tract. So sometimes people who are like marathon runners or ultra marathon runners, like the really hardcore exercisers, when we exercise, it makes cortisol go up. And that's okay. It helps us cope with the stress of exercise. But really extreme exercise, our cortisol levels tend to be too high for too long. And that can actually damage the lining of the gut. So now it makes it hard for us to digest and absorb the vitamins and minerals in our food. And if you're going to try to run an ultra marathon, goodness knows you need all those antioxidants and all those vitamins. So people can actually get sick from that. So there's a lot of different examples of how hormones affect our gut. A lot of women will recognize it right before their period. They can have some bowel changes. Sometimes they get loose stools, for example, when they're having PMS. And it also is the flip side that we need a healthy gut in order to have healthy hormones. When our body makes the hormones every day, our liver has to filter the hormones out of our bloodstream, dumps them in our gut, and then we have to poop them out. So if you're constipated, you may not be properly processing your hormones, and estrogen in particular can build up, and then we get more of that estrogen and progesterone imbalance, and you feel anxious and irritable, and you're shrieking at your kids, and your husband's calling you from the car to see if it's safe to come home. The bacteria that live in our gut, right? We've all got trillions of bacteria in our gut, like probiotics. The bacteria also help us to process our hormones in a healthy way. So if we are eating food that contains pesticides, it can change our gut microbiome, the bacteria in our gut, because the pesticides kill the germs on the plants, but they also kill the bacteria in our gut. And so now we don't have the right kind of bacteria to process our hormones in a healthy way, and that can contribute to hormone imbalances. So hormones are so intertwined with so many things, including our gut and even our environment.
So, if we're going to evolve, we better get those things under control, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So, radiation. We have a lot more radiation in the world now than we ever used to. There was of course, all the bomb testing and this and that put stuff in the air, and it's still there. But then there's also the 5G, the this, the that. So we're really dealing with a lot more radiation than any time in history.
Yeah.
What's that doing to our hormonal balance?
Isn't that a great question? We don't know nearly as much as we should. Like, we've got all these new technologies that we're embracing. Like, I don't know what I would do without my darn phone, but we don't really fully know all of the ramifications. We definitely know that radiation, like, at Chernobyl, like when there's that kind of nuclear, radiation problem, that damages the thyroid gland. That's very clear. We know that very well. There was a study, though, that took kids who had type 1 diabetes. So that's an autoimmune condition that impacts how you can make insulin, which is the hormone that regulates your blood sugar. And what they did was they knew what was going on with their blood sugar and what their doses of insulin was when they were, in their normal environment. And they took them out way into, the meadow somewhere far away from any towers and cell phones and Wi-Fi. And they got them to the most pristine area that they could. And what they found was that their blood sugar balance and their insulin function was much better than when they were surrounded by the Wi-Fi. Now, we don't really know exactly what to do with that information, but definitely we do know that hormones or the radiation does impact a lot of things. We should be studying it more than we are. And I feel like one of the reasons that we're not really studying it more than we are is because, first of all those companies, right, our cell phones and everything, they make gajillions and gajillions of dollars. They don't really want the negative press. But honestly, also the rest of us, we kind of like our modern conveniences. And so I don't think people really want to hear just how harmful it may be. But a lot of people will know that when they have hormone imbalances, they don't sleep well. Like progesterone helps us sleep better. When we go through menopause, we often don't sleep well. Men with low testosterone don't sleep well. If your cortisol is up, you don't sleep well. Many of these hormones interrupt our sleep. And a lot of people will find that if they can decrease all of that electromagnetic radiation in the bedroom, like keeping your phone in the kitchen and, taking all the electrical stuff away as much as you can, they often sleep better. So I think there's a lot to this that we just don't know yet.
Yeah, beware those modern conveniences, right?
Mhm.
Everything has a price. So, like turning off your Wi-Fi at night, keeping your phone away from you.
Yeah.
Um, how
Those
about
are
grounding? We've heard about,
Yeah.
grounding mats, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. They help to diffuse the, electromagnetic frequencies and should be protecting your body from those to, the best technology that we have. It's a very simple thing. Even putting your feet in the sand at the beach,
Yeah, that kind of grounding is
putting
good.
your feet in the grass. Those are simple things we can do too.
Well, it's time for another station break. Please stay with us as Dr. Deb and I continue to explore the hidden symptoms of hormonal imbalances. This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. So, your hormones are responsible. How do you fix it? This is Mission Evolution, missionevolution.org. We're continuing our discussion with Dr. Deb Matthew. Her website, signaturewellness.org. So we've outlined in the last 3 segments, we've outlined some of the major problems that we're all dealing with that have to do with hormones, and we've ascertained that evolving beyond menopause or beyond midlife is definitely hampered if these are all out of balance. So, how do we fix it?
Right. So we've talked about healthy nutrition, managing stress in a healthy way, trying to reduce our exposure to things like plastics and chemicals in the environment, and trying to protect ourselves as much as we can from the electromagnetic frequencies that are sort of all around us. And I think it's really important to say again that these are all things that are within our control because we can't go to the doctor and have them fix us. Like there is no quick fix or easy pill, and we all need to take responsibility for our own health. We all need to be our own best advocate and realize that there is so much about how we feel that is within our control. So sometimes people are so severely depressed, for example, that they just can't get themselves up and, go for a walk or eat the healthy food. And so if that's the case, then that's where medication is really important. But for most people, it's not so severe. We just don't feel that great. And if we would do some of these healthy things, we could feel so much better. And the younger we are, the more so that's true. If you're in your 20s and your 30s, et cetera, changing your lifestyle habits really may be all that it takes to get your hormones back in balance so that you can get back to feeling like yourself again. As we get older, sometimes it's not so simple because once our ovaries shut down at menopause, they're not coming back. And while there certainly are herbs and different, natural things that we can do to minimize the hot flashes and kind of get us through some of those symptoms of menopause, nothing is going to replace the hormones. Nothing can get your estrogen to go up or your progesterone to go up if your ovaries aren't making it anymore. So one of the options that people could consider as they're going through sort of perimenopause and menopause, or if you're a man who's having low testosterone, is to think about the idea of hormone replacement therapy. And one of the things that medical doctors have done that's been a terrible disservice to women is we have villainized hormones. We have made women be terrified of hormones. We've basically told women that hormones are going to cause breast cancer, and that's one of the things that we fear the most. And so for the last 20 plus years, doctors have been telling women that they need to just get through it. It's just the passage of life, just learn to live with it. This is the new normal. And that just unfortunately is not true. The truth is that hormones do not increase the risk for breast cancer, especially estrogen. Estrogen is the one that everybody knows estrogen causes breast cancer, except that it actually doesn't. Estrogen is actually very important for women's health to protect our heart, our brains, our bones, prevent us from having stress incontinence and needing to wear Depends and ending up in a personal care home, frail with the walker. And the study that caused all these problems, it came out in 2002. It shocked everybody that it said that hormones caused breast cancer. But what it really found when we go back now, because we've had 20 years, more than that, 24 years, to go back and look through the data. What we found is that in one group of women who were given a combo pill that had synthetic man-made forms of the progesterone. So it was a combo pill with estrogen and progesterone. There was a teeny tiny increase in the risk for breast cancer. So with women who were not on any kind of hormone replacement therapy, there were about 4 cases of breast cancer for every 1,000 women. If we gave women this combo pill, now there were about 5 cases of breast cancer in 1,000 women. So it was there, but it was really teeny tiny. And we honestly, based on using all our statistics, couldn't even tell if it could just be by chance. You roll the dice enough times and something comes up. There was another group of women who just got estrogen in a pill all by itself. And not only did those women not have an increase in the risk for breast cancer, they actually had a reduction in the risk for breast cancer, which is shocking because that is the exact opposite of what people have been told. So my message is that we need to at least let women know the risks and the benefits so that each woman can make her own decision whether this is something that she wants to think about or not. And unfortunately, what's happening is a lot of women aren't having the opportunity to have that conversation with their doctors because the doctors haven't been trained to do menopause care over the last 20 years because we were all scared off of hormones due to this study that created all of these problems. So a whole generation of women has missed the potential benefits of hormones, which play tremendous roles in protecting us and keeping us as healthy as possible. An analogy that I use, because a lot of people will say, like, it's natural to go through menopause, and so we should just go through it. This is the natural way of doing things. But analogy that I really like is one of the things that happens when we kind of hit 40 is our vision's not as good anymore, right? We have to hold the piece of paper far away in order to be able to see it. And when you go to the eye doctor will say, well, yes, your vision is changing. This is just a natural part of life. But we don't say you just need to live with it and you just won't really be able to read anymore and maybe you won't really be able to function in your job, but that's just natural and just put up with it. What we say is, yes, this is common. It happens to most people. Here's your reading glasses so that you can function and you can carry on and you can still be a contributing member of society and fulfill your life's mission, etc. So to me, I sort of feel like hormones are almost like the reading glasses. They just keep us healthy and well as we are aging so that we are not a burden on society, so that we're less likely to end up in assisted living and a burden to our families, so that we can be independent and we don't need somebody to care for all of our daily activities. So it's an option that's available and women shouldn't be scared of it. And we should ask for a full conversation to get all the information so that we can make a choice.
Well, speaking of hormone replacement, is all hormone replacement equal? There's the synthetic hormones, there's the bioidentical hormones, there's the cyclic bioidentical hormones. Where do you stand on all of that?
Yeah. So this is a part of why it's so confusing is you're right. There's different ways of doing it and there's different kinds of hormones. I believe in bioidentical hormones, which means that they're exactly the same as our body made. Some people call them body identical hormones, as compared with synthetic hormones that are man-made chemicals that are never found in a human's body. They don't have all the same benefits. They have different risks, whereas these bioidentical, the natural form of the hormones, they're widely available. Sometimes we get them from a specialty pharmacy called a compounding pharmacy, but they can also come from regular pharmacies. They can be covered by health insurances in some cases. So there's many, many options available to us. And the challenge that women are going to have is that doctors have not been properly apprised of all the options, and so it's sometimes very difficult. But if you want to have a conversation with your provider and you're finding that you're not really getting the answers, or they're not really open to having the conversation, you are absolutely within the rights to find another practitioner to have that conversation with, because you deserve to have the conversation.
Do you find that what is it? Functional medicine people are a little more better apprised of all this?
Yeah, so functional medicine to me, it's a form of integrative medicine, which means we take the best of regular medicine and the best of natural medicine. But we want to start with natural things first and save our use of the prescription drugs for when we really need them the most. And within that umbrella, functional medicine is when we're looking inside your body to understand which are the parts of you that are functioning great and which are the parts that aren't, so we can fix them. So instead of waiting until you get a disease, we're going ahead of time and looking at the root causes of your symptoms to make them go away, so then you don't need the sleeping pill and the antidepressant and the high blood pressure pill, etc. So to me, it's really just common sense medicine. I feel like everybody assumes that when you go to the doctor, that's exactly what they're doing, but it's really not. What we're really taught to do is to look for diseases that you've already got. So if your blood pressure is not high and if your cholesterol is not high, then we just say, good job, come back next year and we'll check and see if it's off the rails. And then if it is, then we got a pill for that. But so functional medicine is really kind of more like when you take your car in for that, under the hood 12-point inspection. They're not waiting for the fan belt to break or the brake pads to fail. They're checking to see if something's not quite optimal, and they're doing something about it ahead of time to prevent you from crashing your car. That's what functional medicine is doing.
Love it. Love it. I'm glad to see it expanding too. So Deb, it's that time in the show when I get to ask you, what's your mission?
My mission is to help women understand that hormones are important and we do not need to be afraid of hormones. Hormones can have such a tremendous impact in our quality of life, and they don't need to be something that we fear.
That's hugely important, isn't it? I mean, just even recognizing what role they play and how so much of what we're suffering from can relate to those, rather than, oh, I'm just a depressed kind of person. Maybe there's something wrong in my life or whatever. So being able to recognize that there is this issue and where do we go to get it checked out? I think it can change the world. It can change the evolution of our future, can't it?
And it can even save our healthcare system, because, most of our medical expenses come from when we're at the end of life. And when we need all of that care, when we have dementia, that's very expensive. And so if we can keep ourselves healthy and well, then we don't bankrupt our system. That impacts so many things. So yeah, this is really important.
So we're about out of time in the whole show, but I don't want to get close out before. Tell us a little bit about PCOS and
Yeah.
evolution as it applies to evolution.
Yeah. Okay. So PCOS is the most common hormone imbalance problem in women. 1 in 10 women have this. Very common. We all know people who have it, whether we know that they'd have it or not. A lot of women don't know that they have it because it is often underdiagnosed. But what happens is we get high testosterone levels and insulin doesn't work well. So we push towards sort of pre-diabetes or even diabetes. And it causes weight gain. It causes infertility. It causes hair loss, acne, all kinds of problems. But the reason that it is an evolutionary advantage is because one of the common things that it causes is problems with menstrual cycles and infertility. So way in the past, women who had PCOS would bear less children. And since they bore less children, childbirth was a major cause of death for women. Plus, that extra testosterone made them strong. So, when they have to deal with, all the hardships of life in the past, they were actually more prone to be successful and to live longer. So just like our ancestors who survived the famine because they were better at conserving energy from their thyroid, women who have PCOS were more likely to have a survival advantage. And so now many women in our modern society have PCOS, and there are many things that we can do from a natural point of view to make it better, whereas the standard of care in medicine is just to give birth control pills, which just puts a Band-Aid on it.
Doesn't work. Well, it is that magic moment. Unfortunately, we are out of time. Dr. Deb, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. I love talking about this stuff.
Our guest this hour has been Dr. Deb Matthew, America's Happy Hormones Doctor. Dr. Deb is the best-selling author of This Is Not Normal, A Busy Woman's Guide to Hormone Imbalances. To find out more about Dr. Deb, where you can find her book and all she has to offer, visit her website, signaturewellness.org. This has been Mission Evolution with Gwilda Wiyaka. For more information or to enjoy past archived episodes, visit missionevolution.org. But most importantly, please be sure to join us right here next time. This mission will continue, bringing information, resources, and support to an evolving world.